Hello, and we are at the final stretch, final video for this section. We're going to look at the application of percent increase or decrease, which is a little bit different than using the standard PBR style of setup. So let's take a look at the formula. Finding the percent increase or decrease can be done using the methods in the book. However, either one can be done using the following. So there are specific styles of how they present this in the textbook, but the formula I have here is going to make it much simpler because it's just a single formula and it works regardless if it's percent increase or decrease. So the formula is equal to the change divided by the original value times 100%. Nice and quick. So the only thing we got to be careful about is what the change is, and obviously we want to make sure we're careful about what we consider the original value. So let's take a look at this example. Henry Ford started the Ford Motor Company. The Model T first appeared in 1908 and cost $825. In 1913, Ford started using an assembly line and the price of the Model T dropped to $290. What was the percent of increase to the nearest tenth of a percent? Well, okay, so the first thing we should try to identify is the change. Now, the way to think of that is how did it change or how much did it change by when it, in this case, when it decreased? How do we find that change? And it's actually pretty quick because we can just subtract, right? So if we subtracted 825 minus 290, that will give us that specific amount of change. How much did it actually drop by? So then the second part is the original value. So the way to think of this is what did it start at before it changed, before it dropped, before it increased? What was it before that happened? And in this case, it was $825 and then it dropped. So this is the original price for this problem. And now we're just crunching on the calculator. So if we subtract these two, we should get 535 over 825. And then if we divide that on a calculator, let's get our calculator out. 535 minus, or not minus, 535 divided by 825 equals 0.64848848. All right. So 0.64848 and so on times 100%, which would tell us if we rounded it to the nearest tenth, so make sure you move the decimal point before you round. That's important. So it's going to be right here between the 4 and the 8. So the nearest tenth would be this 8, and the 4 tells us to leave it alone. So this should be 64.8%. So it dropped in price quite a bit, almost 65% drop in price. That's pretty good. But wouldn't you kill to just have a vehicle that cost $290? That's pretty cheap. So, all right, let's take a look at one more just to sink this idea home, and that will wrap up this section. So students at Lane College were charged $1,449 as tuition this semester. If the tuition was $1,328 last semester, find the percent of increase to the nearest tenth. All right, so we want to be careful with this one, but it is a percent increase problem. So we want percent increase. So we need the change. So same as before, we can subtract these two numbers and that'll tell us how much it changed by. So 1449 minus 1328. And then what are we going to divide it by? So what was it originally before it changed? So what was it originally before it increased? That's the way you have to think of it. Don't always think that the first number is where it starts and the second number is where it ends. This one's trying to trick you because it's saying this is the tuition now, but this was the tuition in the past. So the past is where you're starting and then time advances to now. So what it was originally was the 1328. So 1328 for your denominator, If we subtract those, we'll get a 121. And if we divide that on the calculator, what do we get? So 121 divided by 1328 equals 0.911144, so on. 0.09111445. So again, think 2 decimal places before you worry about rounding. So this first one is going to be the 10th spot after it's a percent. So this one tells us to leave that one alone. So we should end up with 9.1%. All right, so that should be our answer. So you can see it's a little bit different than how we do the PBR question, so be careful. Anytime you see percent increase or decrease or something similar in wording, this is the way you want to tackle it. All right. Well, that wraps up this video. Nice and quick, I told you. So stay tuned for items on review for this upcoming test, and we'll see you in those next videos. Take care.